Hey guys, this is Zach with Team Covenant, and we are officially back from Fantasy Flight Games World Championship weekend. Got our feet back under us, and I just wanted to take a second and say a major thanks to everyone. We had tons of people who stopped by at the event and just thanked us for the things we're doing with tabletop games. And we've had tons of comments and retweets and shares, and for every order that's come in, the support you guys are giving us is fantastic. And without you guys, we couldn't do what we do, and we're really excited to be doing a lot of the stuff we're working on right now. That being said, we also wanted to thank Fantasy Flight Games. They put on an amazing event. They continue to make phenomenal games, and they are doing tabletop games right. And we're really proud and appreciative of everything they're doing, and excited to work with them. We actually had a really unique opportunity at Worlds. One of the most influential and probably the biggest people in tabletop games right now, just shaping the way the industry is going. Christian T. Petersen, the owner, CEO of Fantasy Flight Games, was willing to sit down with us for quite a lengthy interview, and we had a good conversation with him, and that's what you're about to watch. So sit back, enjoy, and thanks again for all your support, and thanks to FFG for being awesome and taking the time to sit down with us. Hey guys, this is Zach with Team Covenant, and I'm here with Robert, and a very special guest to our videos, which is Christian Petersen, the founder and CEO of Fantasy Flight Games. First off, I cannot thank you enough.
Happy you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm always here.
Thanks for throwing an awesome event and an awesome event center for us to come cover. And I have to start off, I can't thank you enough for just taking the time to sit down with us. I know you don't do this often, so we really appreciate it.
You guys came all the way up here to visit us in our place here, so I'm happy to.
Which is awesome, by the way. It needs to be said. It's
all
right.
All right, so let's get into this. I have
right.
some tough questions for you. Be ready.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to start off with a topic that's on a lot of people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
May not be the obvious place to start just in a conversation with you, but I'm going to start there.
Yep.
This weekend at Fantasy Flight's second ever World Championship weekend.
Yes, sir.
You guys didn't really introduce, you just had it on the shelf. Draft packs for Netrunner and Game of Thrones.
Right.
Obviously, the LCG was brought about as kind of the next stage in tabletop games as far as card games are concerned. Remove the randomness, remove all the chase things, and it's a brilliant format.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you introduce these packs with random cards in it.
Right.
So I just want to give you a chance. I'm told that you're kind of the main drive behind having the draft packs. Where did it come from? What does it mean? Is the world ending? All that kind of stuff.
I'm not sure where to begin. I think the easiest thing to say is that the introduction of the draft packs has absolutely no bearing on our business model for LCGs at all. When I first sat the guys down and I said, "Listen, I have this idea. We should just do all the stuff that we do for collectible card games, but we should do this microtransaction purchase, this evolutionary purchase called a living card game, and we should find a way to make that really successful." And that was maybe 6 years ago. Maybe 7, I don't remember the exact date. One of the first questions that came out was like, well, how are people going to do draft? With that was one of the things at the first 5 minutes of discussing, like, people love draft, how are they going to do that? I was like, well, I sort of feel that that losing draft compared to all the other advantages that we can provide in that format is just worth it.
Totally.
Also because the way that random cards are manufactured is a very different process of collating and handling, and if you guys do any collectible games, there's always discussions about, the collation for this set was bad and the collation for that set was okay, and there's a lot of science that goes into that we were aware of, and the LCG model, of course, is much simpler to deal with. So just doing a draft pack is not necessarily just a matter of like, oh yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. It's the whole manufacturing side changes when you're doing living card games. There's not the whole same approach to the way that the forms are printed, the way the forms are put together. It's all like I print these 60 cards, and it's these 60 cards every time that goes in the box, right? So there's a lot of just technical problems with that, as well as the whole messaging. It's like, well, is it random or is it not? Which is exactly where you're pointing at right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, we put out LCGs, and we will continue to. And but throughout this process, there's always been this: I love draft. How can I play draft?
I hear that a lot.
And any retailer will sort of advocate saying, how do we do that? Do we take a bunch of cards and mix them up, or how do we do this?
Yeah.
And we do want to try to help players in doing things that they love to do with the game. And it didn't really come to us until we started doing our own manufacturing and something we may be able to show you guys later is as part of our printing facility we have here.
You're on demand, right?
So we have a digital print facility that can do stuff basically on demand, made in the USA kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the best part about that is that we basically make a deck at a time. Now we can do an algorithm that basically when the deck comes out, it's whatever we want to put in there from any pool of cards and any sort of relevant algorithm that really makes sense.
So you have guys that are good at math.
Well, we have guys,
and that tells you what cards to digitally print.
Well, they're awesome at math, but we also have the ability to sort of test it. So we can go out there, we can print the deck, we can play it internally, and we can say, "Well, is this really fun?" When you actually make a collectible card game, the way that things are slotted together and the way things are put into with the rare slot, the uncommon slots, and the common slots.
It's an important process.
It's a very important process, and it's not necessarily built for drafting either. It's built to create 3 random allocations of cards. What we can do here, we can actually create a much more complex algorithm that sort of puts slots into the right places.
Nice.
Particularly for games where we really want them to have, a chance of having X amount of plot cards or X amount of a certain thing that's important so the card doesn't break down. And so we can minimize the whole idea that you can do a draft without having all these kind of side things you have to bring into the game. That said, we are selling our draft packs with a starter kit, because had we not, we would have had to sell people over and over and over again the most basic cards. If you want to play 2 or 3 drafts, you don't necessarily want to buy those just core basic things over and over again.
You don't want 10% of the cards to always be the required cards to play kind of stuff.
Well, but there are some cards that will be required to play because you want a certain amount of income-bearing locations, or you want a certain amount of plot cards that you just have to have. So, but if we were to not create that deck on the side, a starter deck on the side, we would have been forced to put them into every draft pack. Yeah. And that means every time you play, you would have bought those over and over and over again. So instead, we can actually make the draft pack a little bit cheaper, separate them from it, and then you can just bring that same starter pack to every game, every draft game you play. So, but the point is that to us the draft format is really it's just a fun party mode of play. It's a variant of play,
sure.
And for us the main mode of play is always going to be the core tournament mode, really for the different LCGs, and the draft pack is a fun variant. And that you can do because it's fun drafting things. It's fun building your deck, sitting around a table with your friends, and kind of having that limitation and that strategy of what do I send on, what do I think he's going to build, what am I getting back, what are these guys building. There's a lot of cool, fun strategy in drafting, and there's also some other benefits that the LCGs never were quite able to take advantage of, which is the how forgiving draft games can be for new players and casual players who are like, oh man, I can't keep up with you. You have all these cards and strategies. And you thought about how to build these decks for 3 weeks, and I didn't have time. But now we can just sit and draft together, and we're all a little bit on the same playing field. Obviously, from an experience level, maybe not, sure. but at least from a card pool level and from a
there's still advantage to being
good. And from a time constraint. Of course there is. So we could create these decks just in our own facility, and we can make them fun, particularly custom made for that experience, and we sell them kind of as a sideshow. Really, I mean, we're not going to be promoting that as a core method of play, or a method of tournaments. To us, even in our own World Championship here, we'd love to have people get together and do this for fun. But really, it's the constructed play out of our actual commercial LCG releases that are simply the main message here, and it will continue to be so. We haven't been pushing that throughout the world the last 5 years because we all suddenly going to drop off the bandwagon now. There isn't anything like that. The thing is, we're able to make these now in a really high quality, in a really sensible way, and make them available for people who want to have that basically, let's get together and have a draft kind of experience.
Sure.
And it will help retailers that are carrying the game. It will help new players that just want to test it or get into it, or the casual player who's like, I don't want to spend all this time on this. I just want to play once in a while in a way where it feels more balanced.
Sure.
So those are all really positive things for the game. It may actually get, we hope, more players playing those living card games. We don't necessarily want those players to sort of come into the game and just be a draft game. That's nowhere even remotely close to what we're trying to do. We want to be able to have a fun experience, and it becomes a portal potentially for some people to get into the real experience, which is the living format.
Full-on game.
Full-on game.
All right, so I just want to make sure I'm hearing you right. You said a couple key things here that I just want to confirm before I ask a couple questions. One, you said you're not going to push this as like a major format. So we shouldn't expect to see like major tournaments where it's, Game of Thrones joust one day, Game of Thrones draft the next day.
That's not the plan. I mean, if enough people think that it's the best idea ever, we're not going to say no. But it's not the plan. The plan for us to have it as as kind of a casual format that people can play on the side, and people would play. If they're eliminated early in a tournament, they can get together with their friends and sort of play. That's what our hope is for it, and that's how we've seen people play draft formats for things like Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
Game of Thrones has been a living card game the longest, and has a really dedicated, fantastic fan base.
Yeah.
But we've seen these guys go out and into flea markets and online stores and buy booster packs of the old product just so they could do draft. And this lived alongside the LCG experience. And these guys are having great fun playing drafts with these old cards.
Yeah.
So we think this is kind of the best of both worlds, where we can have this fun sideshow experience and the main commercial LCG card business at the same time.
Nice. Well, as a store ourselves,
Yeah.
First thing when we saw a picture of the draft packs, it was just like, this is awesome.
Good.
Like, we have a ton of people that play your games and they
The
love
sky
it.
wasn't falling?
No, it wasn't. It was
Okay,
all good for me, because
Good.
it's like, I play a lot of Thrones, and like I kind of get in my like Targaryen like rut, where
Right.
these are the two decks that I play. They're competitive. All the guys at the store are really good, so I can't really tweak and like
Right.
try with other things.
That was me and Baratheon, by the way, for years.
Nice.
Yeah, I just get stuck, and it's like, we did a draft earlier, and I have a Lannister deck. It's like, I have never played Lannister. So that's exciting. I think draft is phenomenal. I really can't wait to see where that goes.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah,
I'm
me
really
too.
excited about it
Me too.
personally. So.
But no, the sky is not falling. We think it's an awesome format. I think a lot of people have a lot of fun with it. And what's kind of encouraging in a way is we're seeing so many people ask us on boards and so on, asking us, what is draft? Which proves that we have a lot of people that are into the LCG format, which really are coming from a different place necessarily than that collectible card game venue.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Matt Phillips won our Game of Thrones regionals, and he's really good, and he's competing in Worlds.
Yeah.
He was like, "What's a draft?" And I was just like,
Yeah.
how are you good, and you don't even know what it is? It's not even that you've never done one. It's just you don't know what
We
it
all
is.
had our first draft sometime, right? And I think maybe, if anything, the fact that a lot of people don't know what it is hopefully a credence to the success that LCGs have had, which has made it possible to play these kind of games and never really encounter what a draft is, which is so prevalent in the collectible card game world.
Absolutely.
But we think we can have just a great experience with this. We're excited about it, and we have the technology that enables us to do this now in a way that hopefully will make the best draft experience, not only a draft experience, but the best draft experience. And check it out.
Yeah,
Check it out.
See if we got it right.
And if we didn't, yell at us. Just kidding. All right, so enough about draft. We'll do more videos on that later. That's gonna be a
right,
topic
enough about it.
Probably for years to come. What I want to talk about for a second is
Draft beer.
draft beer.
No.
Well,
Great
a
segue.
beer with draft would be fantastic.
There you go,
right?
the draft beer.
Available now at the new Fantasy Flight.
Sure.
For me, like, I look at the tabletop gaming industry, and I've been around for quite a while, just like playing games and
Yep.
going to tournaments and whatnot. And the moment I found out about living card games, like, I was super impressed, loved the idea, hated, growing up as a kid, having to spend all this money on cards just to try to keep up. And the more like I'm around Fantasy Flight and seeing you guys, I just legitimately feel, and we kind of did some videos at Gen Con saying this, I think it was an interview with Steve, but it just feels like you guys are kind of reinventing everything. Where you reinventing card games, you're now going back and making drafts better, I think. Arguably, potentially better.
All right. Yes, it's better.
It's better. So
It is.
improved. So I just want to get to the, what is Fantasy Flight Games? Where are you guys going, and what really drives you guys? You use the word best quite a few times, and I feel like your production value is off the charts. The art, the games, everything is just fantastic. You guys are doing it right. What drives that? What are you guys all about? And where's the industry headed? I mean, I feel like you guys are leading the way into a new era of gaming, really.
Thank you. When I get asked this from various sources, it's always a hard question to answer, because it sort of seems to be asking if there's some sort of a master plan. that there's this grand final end goal that when we achieve it, we're running off in the sunset and all the games disappear or something. Really, it's about I think a lifestyle choice and about this really emotional attachment to being a gamer and wanting to do cool stuff, having the power to do things to games that you never were able to when I was a gamer hunting down game stores in Copenhagen and Denmark. I mean, I still think, to me, that being a gamer, what it's all about is me being 12, standing in this game store in Copenhagen that I took an hour by train to get to, and going, this is heaven, right? It's the smell of comics and games and little paints and all this stuff was just magical. And so to me, it's about, you know, the ability to make stuff that we think is legitimately really awesome and cool and makes sense and can be successful, but also just sort of retaining the idea of a hobby games market. When we deal with licensors, you know, saying, "Hey, when are you going to sell in a Walmart?" I mean, that's not excite us. That's not what we do. We don't necessarily make stuff that fits for Walmart or Target or anything like that. What we believe in is in that emotion of being a gamer and creating these really exciting, novel, relatively complex type of games, but they're complex with a purpose. They're complex because they give you all these layers of fun and interesting depth. You know, I used to import Avalon Hill board games into Denmark when I was in high school, and I had a company that basically imported Avalon Hill games. So I was going to shows like saying, "These games are amazing, they're just fantastic," right? And when we first started, you know, we just wanted to make cool games in all these categories. And I've, like many of you guys, I've done the gamer's journey, which is like you started with D&D, and then you get into board games, and you did the miniature stuff, and then you did the painting, and then, oh, what's magic? Oh, look at that, those are fantastic. And then, you know, and all these experiences, and it's just unbelievable. You know, most people will come in and they'll say, "Oh, didn't computer games kill you guys off long ago?" And no, I mean, it's in fact quite opposite. You know, the computer game industry has you know, gone up, but so have what we call hobby games. And in a way, we're seeing, you know, some of our biggest fan base come from people who have, you know, gotten into these sophisticated game experiences via computer games and saying, "Look, what are you doing on this game board? This is just crazy. You know, this looks really great. How can I take part of that?" We're seeing, you know, some of the big gaming sites. What was it, Steve? We just had a big Game Informer and Kotaku and Game of Sutra and all these places that are like, you know, we only cover computer games, but guess what? This is fun. You know, we want to talk about this, and so I believe that there's this soul, this emotion that's the gamer, and we just like to be part of that.
Yeah.
And we like to sort of put our vision and our dream and our projections into something that people will love and they'll be successful, and we can make as good as possible. And we care very much about making stuff that's as good as we can possibly make it. Also, from a commercial perspective, try to have a really diverse range of games. We want to try to put out some of the best games and accessories in every category sold in a hobby game shop. We believe in the hobby game shops ultimately, like yours. You know, and these are magical places for kids like myself, 12-year-olds, to come and go, "Oh, you know, what is this place? They're real people. They're playing stuff, and it's fantastic stuff. It's beautiful. It grows your mind. It gives you friends." That's what ultimately I think is at the heart of what we do. And going to a world championship, I think you'll hopefully see some footage of what's happening here in a new game center. The fact that we can build a new game center like that, the fact that we can have had all these successful games, which has given us the capability of having our own manufacturing facility to make these cool mini expansions for all the games that we do, or these draft packs, or being able to finance a game center like that. That if there's any objective, that's the reward, you know, the emotional payback of being able to do those kind of things. And being able to see as successful as our world championship is here, much thanks to our marketing team. In fact, all thanks to our marketing team. That's the reward. I mean, that to me is the reward. You know, we all have to live. We all have to drive cars. We all have to, you know, grow families. But we don't necessarily do this because, you know, we want to, you know, go public and you know, be billionaires or anything.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily not want to be a billionaire.
If the gaming industry wants to carry us there for what we do, we'll get on the horse. But that's not very likely. So.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That was a good answer.
All right.
I just want to pause on that answer.
You passed.
So, you know, you guys make a lot of products, and I really do believe, you know, you said you want to make the best products you can.
Yep.
And I think you do. I mean, it comes across in the X-Wing models that are just, I've never seen better pre-painted models in any game I've ever encountered.
It's true.
I mean, let alone just models. I mean, just the model itself is crazy. So what is your, like, the feather in your hat? Like, what's the thing that Fantasy Flight's done or that you've done that's just like, you're if you were gonna say, here's the one thing I did that was just the one thing, what is it? If you need to narrow it down to like a top 3 or something, I'll accept that, and then I will choose the best.
There is no one thing. I mean, there really is not. I mean, if there was one thing, then maybe we'd stop. I'm gonna think we finally moved into our new building, and then we opened our event center across the street. And so, if there's any one thing, it's basically sort of what we've done to sort of the total accumulation of having staff that are fantastic, of having people come visit our game center that really likes what we do, being able to have you tell me that you think your stuff is good. I mean, that's I mean, to me that's the ultimate, reward. There's a couple of things that I think that we did maybe historically that I think that we're proud of and have been able to make a difference. One of them is about 2005. I don't even know how long ago that is now. 8 years ago. When we first came out with Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition, we came out with this massive box, this epic sized box, and it was $80. And at that time, we always try to do things that are meaningful and progressive and are able to push the industry and ourselves forward. But at the time, an $80 big box board game was considered heresy. I mean, it was unbelievable. There was nothing like it except for maybe some very rare Avalon Hill titles like The Longest Day or something like that. This was on a commercial level. Pushing a $80 board game into retail was considered to be completely insane.
Suicide.
And unlike anything that has ever been done before.
Yeah.
And I think we said, no, we don't believe that the price actually is what really matters. What really matters to gamers is what's in the box and what kind of experiences that gives you. And that the tolerance for price is actually not really the issue here, but it's people want better stuff. They want better components, they want better gameplay experiences, nicer bits, and more involved experiences. And I think what happened since then, and we came out with a number of other games in that vein and that price point, it allows us to do so much more.
You can make such a higher quality
so much more stuff. And I think, if anything, since that day, I think the whole industry really has sort of, that has benefited everyone, because you're seeing games from other publishers out there now 90, 100, 70, 60. I mean, the whole elevation of price point has really allowed us to plumb new depths of where games can go. And so that was definitely an important field, and it's a way when we also love role playing. It's another big passion of ours, and that's one where the role playing market is at in such a state is that it's still a little bit behind about what is the expected level of price point that's acceptable for a book, because it was been very low and artificially kept very low, and the expectations of what should something cost in role-playing games has been so low for so long that it really constrains how many resources that a company can put into these things. Yeah. And we were sort of trying to break the back of that a little bit and saying, hey, we're really going to try to do our very, very best, and we're going to try to get the best art and the best material and the best ideas into these things, but we have to charge for it so we can keep doing it.
Yeah.
And that's helping. It's moving forward a little bit, but that's one area where I think as soon as role-playing realizes that we can pay a little bit more for that, the kind of ideas and quality people and quality experiences that may flourish from that could be phenomenal, because that is an area that in the gaming retail is not as popular as it has been. Sure. And undeservedly so, in my opinion.
So you're a big role player.
For many years my flame, my thing was Call of Cthulhu role playing.
Nice.
I mean, I have written adventures. We run conventions with Call of Cthulhu, and so I was really, really into that, and which is, you can kind of see tendrils of that, sure, if you catch my drift, in how important it is to us to do board games based on Lovecraft. Yeah. We have Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror, Elder Sign, and so on, and that's kind of carries from that flame of the unspeakable things right beyond our doorsteps, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So you hear a lot of people that work in the industry, whether it's at a game company or a game store or any number of places along the way between games getting made and games getting delivered to a gamer. Right. That once you start being in the industry, you stop playing. Do you get a chance to play games? If so, what are you actually into? What do you play? What would Christian Petersen, not as running FFG do with his free time as far as gaming?
Far too little. Far too little gameplay. I prefer to play, when I play games, I would say these days would be, I love a game like Descent. Is really into. I can't play role playing as much anymore because I also have a family, like many gamers out there that have kids and whatever. You get into a different stage in life. Can't wait for them to grow up so I can play more games with them. It's like, come on, and that's tough when you're a parent. Your kid's starting to grow old. You're like, stop growing. But if you grow, then you can play games. It's like,
When you get past the
very
middle
tough.
stage.
Very tough. But fortunately, I don't have too much to say over that, so they just grow anyway.
Can't stop it.
But yeah, I would say I really I love games like Descent, which are basically like these role-playing, character-building experiences you can play in short sessions, and then of course card games, where you can do a lot of the creative part of it at home, building decks, looking through cards, and then coming up with strategies and sort of seeing how do they do, in the real world. There's just something really compelling about that. So that's probably where I'm at personally. I would love to do more role-playing, and I see a lot of the guys here role-playing. I'm like, oh, that's so much fun. but I can't. Fortunately, we have some just fantastic guys that are really, really knowledgeable about that, much more than I have you really ever been, despite my Call of Cthulhu roots.
Right. You're really going for it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Do you have any specifics?
I actually wanted to hear you talk a little bit more, if you're willing, on the LCG format itself.
Yep.
And what was the ultimate impetus that made you want to take the other fork in the road and take card games in an entirely new direction than they've never gone before?
Couple different things. One of the most important things about FFG as a company is that we're very international. It's something that maybe a lot of people don't realize. About half of our business is international. I myself grew up in Europe for most of my young gaming career, and so I'm very cognizant about being aware of that culture of gaming in different places, and particularly in Western Europe, as I'm most knowledgeable about, but there's also in Japan, Asia, China is actually becoming a very big gaming country. And the thing, when we were putting out collectible card games, which are also very fun, but we were putting out a number of different collectible card games, and we're finding them to be very, very difficult to sell in Europe in particular, and it had to do with kind of the culture of, I kind of want to know what I buy. I don't feel like I want to chase down that hole. I don't want to get involved in that kind of very strenuous lifestyle decision of getting into a competitive collectible card game. And so we were not really, commercially doing that well with our games in Europe, despite people saying these are really good games. But as soon as you say CCG, people, they turn around and walk off. I saw this myself, being on a little stand at Essen. And trying to actually say, hey, this Game of Thrones is really good. You should try it. And then people are sitting down saying, and then as soon as you say it's collectible, they're like, they put their cards down very politely, and then they walk off.
That's right. The Europeans, man.
Well, that was sort of a big eye opener. And it's like, these guys like this game, but as soon as I put them in a random pack, I lose them. Mm-hmm. That's not good. And at the same time, in the U.S., collectible card games had gone through all these ebbs and flows, and at that time, it was really kind of in a trough. The Pokemon had dropped off. Yu-Gi-Oh was kind of hot, but it was a whole different kind of culture. It was a much younger gamer. So into it, even Magic was probably at an all-time low at that point. Have since, of course, become huge again, which is great. But we then decided that hey, is there another way to do this? And one of the things we'd done is that we had done the Call of Cthulhu collectible card game, and which had done really well, but then the demand had dropped down to a level where it wasn't really sustainable anymore. Sure. And so what we're doing with Game of Thrones, we're preserving a couple of strips of cards from our sheets, and we were putting them in fixed packs that we called asylum packs. And these were back in the day where there were there was 20 cards. There's 3 copies of 10 cards and 1 copy of a single card for a total of would it be 40 cards? Yeah. Yeah, there'd be 40 cards in the pack, we call them asylum packs, and we're like, well, let's just do these to make sure that we can give some good stuff for our Cthulhu fans, since we're no longer able to support it with big collectible releases. And these were fantastically successful. People love these asylum packs. This is really great. We can't almost give away our collectible games, but these little asylum packs are doing great. Mm-hmm. And so maybe there's really something to this. The most important part is that you can actually support an LCG with a much smaller fan base of people, particularly if you are able to put them on a worldwide level. And so you actually were able to create a really high quality experience that's very sustainable for a smaller fan base. Whereas the CCG model, because of the expensive packaging, expensive collation issues, and typically very large clusters of cards released at the same time, it's much more of a kind of a binge
Sure.
binge mentality, and it requires a much larger play group to keep momentum. And so LCG is kind of like, well, it's the same experience. It's something that we can keep building on. It's a good international model, and it's something that I think is legitimately have all these positive traits for retailers as well. Because if you can get something in every month, you can hopefully get a game group coming in and coming back to the store every month. Yeah. And the idea of a sort of semi-subscription living model of developing a game seemed to be interesting. I mean, it's if you look at it from hindsight, it's a little bit, well, so you're just putting out a game with little expansions, right? That's all it is. And that's kind of what all it is. But actually putting together and having the vision for the style of game and the type of approach of the packs and so on was pretty novel for that time.
Sure.
And I still think people are discovering it today. I mean, with every new game that we put out, we simply, one of the first things that we see people come in, I really liked Netrunner. What's these other games you're playing? Is it Invasion, or is it Game of Thrones? Is it Call of Cthulhu? And so people are actually allowed to discover more games, which kind of harkens back to our idea that games and the hobby is something more than just a single game or more than just a single experience or a single period of years. We think most people that I know that are gamers never quite stop being gamers.
Yeah.
I've never actually seen somebody who's a real gamer and then 20 years later saying, I don't do that anymore. No way. They're just into different kinds of games.
Once you've kind of been introduced to it, it's turning back.
People drift in and out of their life, and then some people, when they start having kids, then there's not as much time for it, and they kind of slowly slow down. But then as you see a lot of people come back now, and people my age in the 40s and some in the 50s and later coming back saying, I love games, I'm back, I'm free, or I have more money, or something that sort of allows them to come back and experience it. But what they want to play now is not what they used to play. But the idea again is to be able to play many different games and have different experiences is one of the key things about the LCG. Where I'm no longer, I would like you to spend as much money as you did when you're into Magic on games. Don't get me wrong, but I think it'd be better for you and for the people you want to introduce to games if there was a bigger variety of games, and that's something that LCDs allows us to do. I think our plan was, well, guess what? We think people could even play 2 of these games. And that's huge because for the retailers back then, when you had a CCG, it was actually anathema to your business to introduce a new CCG. Yeah. You introduce a new CCG, you're splitting your player group, and it's harder to find new players if you're splitting your player group because people only played one game. You can only really afford to play one game. If you can only afford to play one game, then your network of people you can contact are relatively limited. But if you go into a game store and you play 2 or 3 different games, chances are that you'll be able to find somebody to play a game is much higher.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can maybe play 2 of these games or even 3 should sprout all this opportunity for you to play more and for you to have different experiences. And people who didn't like that one particular game may like another one. And that's big. That was one of the sort of the key there. We have these sort of 5 to 7 key advantages that we think LCG's had, and they still have it today, despite draft packs.
Despite those darn random packs.
And we very much believe in it. We really think it's a strong model. And I mean, if you go look today, what the dream and the vision was to see these different games with all these packs hanging down, and just be able to have people go in and say, hey, I was looking for this card. Well, it's in this pack. And then you go and say, yay, now I have it. Now I can go make that deck I want. It's pretty cool.
I 100% agree. I mean, a lot of the stuff you're saying is we are kind of always in a store and we see it. Like we get to see it. Someone walks in, they don't know what an LCG is, and you tell them it's not collectible, and they're like, oh, and they're like getting back into game or they've never played gaming. And selling a non-gamer on a CCG is crazy. Like they're just baffled. I'm gonna buy random. I don't know what I'm getting.
Every quarter you're gonna spend about $200.
Yeah,
it worked well for pump.
And then what I want to talk about, what I think is maybe one of the biggest advantages you kind of hinted to, and I just want to get your take on it if this was very, very intentional. And I think it is, but you can let me know. You said you could maybe play a couple LCGs, and I 100% agree. The 20 cards a month instead of 300 in every 3 months is easier to keep up with. It's a lower monetary commitment. As a gamer yourself, not having that burnout, I think being able to switch between games, how important do you think that is?
Well, that was one of the five principles. Was we believe that the CCG model, in maybe 3 out of 5 instances, leaves the player with a negative feeling towards games, as he kind of realized that maybe he overspent or he overcommitted or I don't know. I think one of my revelations was when I was even doing our own CCGs at the time. I bought a couple of boxes. And I sat home and I had this booster opening fest. I'm like, what am I getting? What am I getting? And then all of a sudden I sat down and looked at everything I'd done with all my trash next to me, and I said, I just spent $150, and I had this remorse about what I did, and that was no. I mean, that's about why am I feeling bad about having bought this game?
Yeah.
And I felt that can't be quite right. Isn't there a way to do that a little bit differently, where I feel really excited about it, and of course there isn't the same kind of lottery feeling of sort of pulling open the packs.
Really high.
Maybe instead what we're trying to do is replicate the feeling of what's new and exciting when you have that monthly pack.
Mm-hmm.
And you're opening it up, you're like, ooh, you're sort of looking through them. That kind of replicates that kind of level of discovery a bit that we wanted to have.
Do you feel, I mean, I think, I really do. I said it earlier, I think LCGs are a revolutionary model for card games. But, you're saying you have this experience, and I had it too, right? You're 12, you go into a game store, and you're just like, going around. At the time, I was 11 playing Pokemon competitively.
All right, there you go.
Yes.
Maybe you saw a little game called Disc Wars that somebody was trying to sell. Hey, Pokemon guys, Disc Wars is really fun. You want to try it?
Yeah. I feel when I come to Worlds versus like just the general crowd at Gen Con or other events, what I've seen, and just people that play the games that you guys sell or make, I guess you don't technically sell them direct. I feel like for one reason or another, your games attract a more mature audience. I won't say older, because that's not necessarily the case. But, there's not a lot of 12-year-olds playing Game of Thrones, which I think is a benefit personally. But as the one that kind of, you're looking back and it's like the highlight is walking in as a 12-year-old. And
Yep.
What's your take on, you do, I feel like, attract more mature games. I don't really feel like you have too much targeted towards the younger audience, and I'm not asking you to do so. But what's your take on that whole, like, that vibe?
Well, first of all, the first game I played when I was 12 was Hitler's War by Avalon Hill. It's not necessarily the kind of game
I didn't say age. I
you
said
think.
mature. I was maturity level.
So maybe that caused everything. All the problems that you're currently seeing.
Started with Hitler.
It starting with that damn Avalon Hill game. I think maybe this has more to do with how the industry evolved. We were always kind of making games to where we were at, and at least early on. And there was a period of time starting in '99 when we started putting out games, and it really lasted for the next 10 years, where games for kids, that category, was kind of captured in Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! You mentioned it yourself.
Yeah.
And when you were playing Pokemon, you weren't about to look at something else.
No way.
So there's very little incentive for me to try to make something for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that may have something to do more than anything. I think there are some games out there coming out right now, not necessarily by us, but some others, but that look very like games we would do. Like a fantastic game is King of Tokyo. That's a game that a 12-year-old can play and have a lot of fun and kind of discover some of what gaming is all about. And when you look at it, it looks like a 12-year-old game, but it has richness and it has depth and it has cool components. It's just not unlike something that we would or would want to make. In fact, we'd be honored to publish that if anybody wants to give it to us. But I doubt they will, because the publisher's doing a great job. So there isn't sort of the kind of we don't understand 12-year-olds, and so we don't want to sell anything to them. It's more that wasn't really what we got good at.
Yeah.
Sure. And so we've continued to sort of try to get better at what caught on.
Twilight Imperium seems to occupy like a almost sacred position within like the perspective of Fantasy Flight, at least from where I'm looking at it.
All right.
Can you elaborate on your thoughts on that game? Because you had, if not a heavy hand, if not the entire hand in developing that game, as far as I'm aware.
Yep.
What are your thoughts and feelings about that? Because I've never played it. It has an excellent reputation. Why should anybody play that game?
Because it is unashamedly long and epic. And you will have a lot of fun playing it, and it's unlike anything really out there right now. It's not trying to be short and sweet and a filler game. It's trying to do to really give you the idea that you're really feeling that you're controlling an intergalactic empire and you want to control the whole galaxy and smash all your rival races if possible. I mean, you want to have an experience that you could tell a story when you're done playing it. You want to say, I grew this empire from the corner of the galaxy, and all this stuff happened, and then there were these agendas, and then there's these wars happened, and you really want to tell a story when you're done. I mean, I think that covers a lot of the games I want to make. Is that if I feel like I'm done playing it, if I feel I can go home and I want to tell my wife about how it happened, what happened, and I had this journey, then it's less important to me exactly how long it takes, because that's one of the problems with Twilight Imperium. It can take 6 hours. Maybe that's why you haven't played it, because you haven't committed the whole night to it. And we're not trying to be all for everybody. You know, this is unashamedly a long, epic experience, and we want to make it the best, most flavorful, long, epic experience that we can. In terms of the history of the game, it's the first game that I made, and it's how we got into the gaming field at all. When we first started Fantasy Flight Publishing back in '95, the original business idea was to take European comic books and children's graphic novels like Lucky Luke and you may have heard of Tintin or Asterix. There's a whole beautiful, amazing volume of awesome comic book material in Europe, and it's very, very scarcely discovered here, even so today. But we thought, hey, we could take some of these books, we could publish them over here, and it would be awesome. It wasn't awesome because it didn't sell at all, and then so in fact we were almost out of business. We're very proud of the books we put out, but nobody wanted to buy them. Didn't help at that time that the comic book industry was going through a terrific amount of turmoil. This were the days when Capital City and Diamond were rivals, and they were trying to get exclusives, and Marvel had gone with Heroes World. I mean, we can get into a long story of that period of comics in the early '90s. Was a very exciting time, but not to publish European funny little comic books. It was not a good time. So we ended up burning through all of our energy and all of our efforts and all of our money, and sort of say, finally, it's like, oh, this is not going to work. But saying, I like games better actually, and I think we could make one now, because we learned how to print stuff. We learned how to manufacture and how to create, 4-color separations and how to use a fax machine, because back then there was no email. I feel like a dinosaur, because the companies actually existed with no internet and no email back then. But we learned how to print, and so I said, hey, I have this idea. I have this idea for a board game that I always wanted to play, which is this kind of galactic conquest game, and there was nothing like it out there really at the time. And I really like to make this game, and I think I can do it. I think we can print it using some of the tools and digital publishing softwares that we had. And so I set ahead, and I tried to make the board game I wanted to play that hadn't been around. I would have bought it right away had Avalon Hill put out that game. They had a few games that were slightly similar, but they were much more complex and more about exploration and less about actually building galactic empires and having political debates with other races and so on. And so we put.
I know.
And so have you never played Twilight Imperium?
No,
I feel ashamed.
I'm sold. Like, can we start now?
Cut.
I get out of here.
Please.
I feel like
You see what's right behind you?
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
It looks so.
You guys got to go.
the more we talk about it, so just know a little bit about us.
You'll be a little bit older after you played it, of course.
Yeah,
but
six hours.
You'll be happier.
It sounds awesome. I feel like it's the kind of game that you bust out a couple times a year. You grab some beers and you just.
Oh, absolutely,
Get in for a while,
I
right?
mean, it's not an every week experience. Nor we want it to be. We want it to be something extraordinary that you play. And I get a lot of questions like, why did you make Twilight Imperium shorter or make another version of it? And we're like, well, that's not really the point. It's you don't make a really short Lawrence of Arabia or anything like that. That's meant to be. There it is. Now I'm comparing Twilight Imperium to a masterful movie, and I feel a little bit weirded out by that.
It's your Lawrence of Arabia.
But you don't really cut that down, right? It has to breathe, and it has to take the time it has to take to sort of tell the tale. And that I think is maybe something that's a little overlooked in gaming today. It's like it's a long game. What's the problem? It's you can have a great experience. You can have it for even longer time. It seems like a good deal to me.
Why would you not want that?
But of course, there's a room for all kinds of games, and in my opinion, for short, for long, for fun, for serious, etc. There's a whole gamut of things you can do, and Twilight Imperium sits in one of those extreme spots, and we're still very proud of it. The game did, we put out the first edition, and it's one of those amazing things. We put out the first edition, we printed 1,500 copies, and I went to Origins with it, and we had gone to these comic book shows, and I brought like cases of comics and sold maybe for like $40 worth of comics. And it's like, oh, it cost me $1,000 to get here, and I sold $40. This is horrible. I said, how can we must keep figuring out how to do this. But then I went to Origins, and we had a little tiny Ford Escort station wagon, and we just stuffed it as many boxes as we could, and we went there, and people were like, wow, this is amazing, we've never seen anything like this before. And I sold all of them in like a first day.
Wow.
And we're like, oh my God, stop the comic books, right? Basically, was the general idea.
Wow.
And then we got into games, but of course, even selling 1,500 copies of a, at that time $45 board game does not feed a lot of people, and doesn't pay for a lot of apartment buildings or apartments. Sorry. And so there was a long slog of making games, but we put out second edition, which also did really well, and then third edition probably was the most important, because I feel the third edition takes some game design principles from a lot of different inspired sources, and combines them with what may be consider a signature kind of very, very expansive components and kind of expansive gameplay with the amount of cards you get and plastic figures and all that stuff, which in itself can be very gratifying if you're using them. If they're just sitting around, just looking at you the whole time, they cannot be very fun. But you're actually using these toys and using these components and having this game experience. That's kind of become a signature experience for part of our business.
That's awesome. Well, now I have to play.
Yeah, I'm sold.
Or I'm never coming back.
We could probably organize that.
See you next year. I'll play that on
He's
weekend.
like, let's play right now on video.
Yeah, so it's a very important game for us. It really is, and we were able to use that universe in those races that we can in some of our other games as well. We actually have, our game center here, we have a has been around for 3 years now, I think 4 years, and it's amazing. With the Twilight Imperium fans that we have are some of the most loyal fans that we have. We have just here we have a group that's come back every week for 200 weeks straight or something like that, and they play Twilight Imperium.
Wow,
that's fantastic.
They're fantastic, and they're very loyal to the game, and we're very gratified. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's really awesome as the designer, the creator of that experience. So. You made that game. It's got I've only ever heard good things about it. Outside the fact that it takes a long time.
Yep.
But I don't think that's a negative. That's just that's a warning.
It's reality.
It's like a warning label. I'm curious, is the game designer that's sitting here working on anything?
I'm working on something, but I can't talk about it.
That's enough.
I am working on something. As I said, I had not. This is the first time I worked on something for 2 or 3 years. That there has been times where I've started to do something, and I just have had to sort of say, okay, here are the ideas. You go, somebody else do it. Oh God, I don't have time, because there's a lot of things to handle. Just regularly. You guys want a store, right? And it's very little of it. In fact, is showing people games, and so there's a lot of stock management and a lot of resources that go into just normal business stuff. Health insurance and rent and taxes and accounting and all that stuff.
All the fun stuff.
There's a lot of that. So. But I am very excited. We're doing I'm doing a design right now, and I think it's going to be great.
Excellent.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'll have to play that one.
Yeah.
Another thing that I want to touch on is I feel like you guys, within the past 2 or 3 years, I've seen you guys go from just being an awesome company to you have a Star Wars license, you have a Lord of the Rings license, you have technically Warhammer, you got Netrunner, I think you got that license from Wizards, that was an Richard Garfield game. You take some older board games and you start publishing those again.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, that's
Let's
it.
not forget.
And that is also now.
We have had Game of Thrones for like 11 years, I think.
Which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Then the show kicks off, and Star Wars is making another movie, which is very, very nice. The Hobbits are coming out. It's all great. But you guys do a fantastic job of licensing and finding these licenses and getting them and timing it well. And how much of that is just going after things you love, and then those things being awesome enough that other people decide to make movies and stuff about it, or is it luck? Is it what is the licensing process like? What goes into it? I feel like that's a skill you guys have just based on what you guys are doing right now.
For every license we have, we probably turn down 25. we get offers all the time to do games based on new movies and computer games or new ideas.
So you guys get approached?
We get approached all the time. So we take a very, very, very candid and very, very strict approach to what we want to be involved in on a licensing basis, and we chase relatively few these days. We sort of feel like we have some really strong partnerships. However, I do want to comment that this has not been a short journey. As you said, it feels like over the last couple of years. Well, it's actually been a much longer journey than that. We got our first, what I would consider, really important license back in I think it was 2000, which was Lord of the Rings. There's a great partner that we have in England who had the Lord of the Rings license, and he gave us the opportunity to get involved with those games. Sure. Maybe in part because of our energy and our willingness, but Lord of the Rings has been an important. That poster actually has since day one, has actually sat in my office since 1995. It's a Lord of the Rings poster. In case you don't, maybe show it later. You could take a picture of it later. But it's a Lord of the Rings poster, and so getting the Lord of the Rings license to me was very important. And since then, we have been involved in licenses that we consider to be legacy licenses that have that are greater than their moment, and I think that's very important to us. And we don't always get that right. There are certain things that we may have done that are not greater than their moment, but we thought they would be, or we thought they were. But most of the time we got it right, and I think if you look at things like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings and so on, Game of Thrones even, those are true. Game of Thrones, I should give the credit to a gentleman named Brian Wood, who's no longer working for Fantasy Flight. We had the Lord of the Rings license, and we're basically saying, well, maybe there's some other great novels out there that we can work with, because in doing Lord of the Rings, we got a lot of contacts in the book markets and other markets that are affiliated with literary components, and he said, well, I really like this Game of Thrones book, and I had seen this being read by 2 or 3 other people, and he said, maybe there's something to that, because he says it's good, I've seen it around, maybe there's something there, and I read it, and of course I thought it was fantastic, and so we contacted George, and we started working with him, and he's just best guy ever. I mean, the guy's fantastic, and he deserves every credit that he has now. But this was 10 years before the TV show, and so we sort of took it all the way through there. Just as you guys patiently waited for book after book, or not, or I think when we first started, there were 3 books out, and now there are 5, right? Mm-hmm. So it's hopefully a 6 soon. But it's been just a fantastic experience. Then we heard that they were going to make a TV show out of it, and we're like, okay, because we've seen things before. It's going to have a movie yet. It's going to be huge, and it just doesn't happen. In this particular case, they knocked out of the park. I mean, this is one of the best TV shows ever, most successful ever for sure. Yeah. And so blind luck, I would say, in terms of where it had gone. I mean, I don't know how hard George worked for this TV show, but from our perspective, we just believed in the property, and it wasn't. We didn't have some sort of master plan. This property is going to be a giant global success on a media level ever, right? I mean, we didn't felt that was necessary. What we had to do, if you get an early preview copy of Game of Thrones, we bought 1,000 softcover novels from Bantam. I think it's Bantam anyway, and we wrapped the rules for the card game around the novels, because we had retailers telling us that we were vanity publishing, because we're making games based on a property that we were just fanboys of and nobody else knew about, and so it was the vanity publishing project, So saying people can't just publish games on their little fantasies, right? Because then they would fill the retail stores up with junk, and so we're getting these criticisms, and we're saying, well, this is crazy. You should read this book seriously. So we put our money where our mouth was, or the reverse, so however the saying is. And we gave people a demo deck, and we wrapped the rules around the actual novel, and we sent it out to 1,000 retail stores saying, read the damn novel, it's awesome, and so I can only think that we've had a little bit to do with some of the success that the actual property has had, and we've been publishing cards for that property since 2000, basically 2001, I think, wow, what a ride!
Yeah,
it's good, it's great.
That's awesome.
Does that answer your question? Maybe I ran astray of your question.
No, that was excellent. That's everything.
Okay. But we've had associations with great licenses over the years. We started with Lord of the Rings, to Game of Thrones, to things like Warcraft, World of Warcraft, Doom, later Civilization, then Star Wars. What am I missing?
Gears of War.
Gears of War. I'm missing something big in between there. Anyway, we Games Workshop, of course, which is a great partnership that we've had for going on 5 years now. Being able to sort of harness and make board games and card games and role-playing games based on their properties.
Yeah.
One thing, I know you mentioned it when you spoke at Gen Con this year. Someone asked something about digital card games or whatever.
Yep.
Just quick, maybe 1-2 minute, what's your stance on tabletop games that aren't on the tabletop? And what's your opinion about them and how they affect the industry? And how does Fantasy Flight treat that relationship?
It's an important field. We're being cautious about it and careful about it, but we do think it's relevant and it's important. But I don't think that they are necessarily. Again, if a computer games really threatened the kind of hobby game spirit, then they would have killed it a long time ago rather than having both grow. The only experience that we really have, I think, is with our Elder Sign board game. We have a board game called Elder Sign, which is a Lovecraft standalone card game, and we did a computer game of that, or I should say an app for that. The app's been
for the board game.
For the board game. The app has been extremely successful, and we've only seen sales of the board game go up. So the app itself actually said, "Hey, this is really fun. I want to play this as a physical product." So we don't see it being really as a mutually exclusive proposition. I would see that they can feed each other, they can help each other, and it's a very exciting field. And it's something that we ourselves are very cautious of, but we're also trying to be as innovative and as explorative in that field as we can. So we have a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in an R&D state, and some less or more advanced. And so you have not seen the last of us in that field. But it doesn't strike to the heart of like that game store, the hobby game store emotion. And so to us, it has to be something that makes that better somehow, or brings more people into that spirit. And so I think there's interesting things coming, and we certainly have things brewing in that field. But I think you'll be excited about what we have when we finally talk about it.
Excellent.
Awesome. As a pretty influential person in the tabletop games industry, are there any? So like you look at CCGs and you say, here are problems with it. We could do something better than this. Are there any problems in the industry that you see that you think need fixed, or that and it may relate to stuff you can't talk about, that you're actively working on solutions to said problems, but is there any overarching fundamental like things in this industry that you think really need a second look?
Nothing that I think is necessarily within the power of publishers or retailers per se. The one thing I think probably injures the industry the most is online communities and the negativity and criticism and bad behavior that basically comes from fans and from basically message boards. And we're all big boys. We can all read criticism. We can all take it what it is. But it can get to a point where it's so overwhelmingly negative. You just throw your hands up and saying, "This is just not worth it. I don't need to be have my." My 5 generations of my family insulted for the color of a die or whatever, right? It's something that I feel strongly about as a society as a whole, in particular in our niche categories, that we need to try to be civil at least in addressing each other and addressing companies online. There's this big sense that maybe for FFG, because we are bigger than we have been, that we're not made of people, and there was some sort of a Borg cube flying around that I can take pot shots at, whatever. This is not true. I mean, there's a lot of people that I know people here that basically can't take it. They're saying, really valuable people that could have created great things for games, and they've said I can't take the insults and the really hostile atmosphere out there. So if anything, I just and I don't know from my own perspective, you can sort of say things you regret and whatever, and then we can work on it along with the best of them. But if we can get to a little more of a civil, little less trollish, little less impulsive, negative culture online, which is how most of us interface with our communities these days, that would go a long way. And I think that's the one thing I see the most danger in. Like, for example, not quite of our industry, but I know that the and I can't speak for whether this is true or not, but I heard that the company BioWare had made some of the really fantastic computer games, and they put out things that people have loved, and Mass Effect being one of them. They put out Mass Effect 3, but the negative reaction, for a variety of reasons, some petty, some maybe legitimate, some not, was so vitriolically bad that these two guys that own that company, who was given so much and who's done so many fantastic experiences, they quit. So we're done. This is not worth it, and that's a real shame. That's a loss. That's a loss to everybody who's out there yelling, right? So there must be ways that we can put our opinions forward without kind of the kind of hate and hyperbole that we use. So that if anything, I'd like to see just more restraint and there's some people out there that I think are fantastic. A guy like Drew Dallas, who runs a Card Game DB, is one of the kindest, gentlest, most restrained souls on an online basis that I know, and I think we can learn a lot from those kind of people, because we don't scare each other away, and we don't scare the guys who are working on the stuff away. So that to me is probably the number one thing I'd like to see change, but it's very little within my power to do so, other than talk to you about it. So think about it, guys.
Think about it before you drink.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm out of questions. I don't want to take any more of your time, but I do want to give you a chance if there's anything you want to say or anything you want to get across to people watching, the gamers at home. Give you the chance to do that, and if not, I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with us.
Well, thank you guys. I mean, I'm in a way, when an event like this World Championship and seeing what you guys do online leaves me a bit speechless. I think I told you guys when I saw, I've seen on occasionally, I go in and check your website and I see the videos you guys do that promote our games and that promote some of the strategies behind our games. I'm just blown away. We have a whole media team here that do all these cool things too, and the ability for guys like yourselves and other groups out there to do these things that are so well done and so meaningful and so true is just a joy to see. So whatever we can do is to help support you and guys like you. Let us know.
Will do.
All right?
Well, we really appreciate it, and we love your game. So
thank you very much.
Keep doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.